Hello and welcome. You're watching News Center. I'm Archana Solanki. The ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas still awaits the final approval. Israel has now said that its cabinet will not meet to approve the deal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has accused Hamas of attempting to obtain last-minute concessions on some aspects of the deal. Hamas has said it was committed to the ceasefire agreement, which was announced by the mediators. Celebrations erupted in Khan Yunis and other parts of Gaza after mediators Qatar and the United States said that Israel and Hamas agreed to a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal following 15 months of war. Israel has reportedly killed 80 people in Gaza after the deal was announced. Meanwhile, both outgoing US President Joe Biden and his successor Donald Trump have claimed credit for hammering out the deal that had been in the making for months. Biden also struck an ominous tone in his farewell address, warning that an oligarchy is taking shape in America. Listen in.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, by my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration. That's why I told my team to keep the incoming administration fully informed, because that's how it should be, working together as Americans. We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech-industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts.
Eric Garcetti, the outgoing US ambassador to India, has welcomed the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. In his last interview as the US envoy, he also spoke to my colleague Parikshit Luthra about India-US ties under the Biden administration. Take a look.
The overnight announcement on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. The Biden administration, the State Department, has thanked Trump for helping them reach this point. How do you see these developments?
You know, first of all, let me just say at the end of my time here, just what a wonderful 2 years this has been. The Indian people have been so deeply inviting, warming. You know, they have taken me in a way that I never expected, even though I've been coming here since I was 14. And I've also seen India be an incredible voice for peace and for progress in the world. I think the announcement yesterday is welcome. We have too much war in the world today. We're both peaceful countries that want to see conflict. As the Prime Minister said, this is not an era of conflict. It should be an era of peace. And I hope we can see hostages come home, and we can see violence reduced, and that we can finally see armies be able to retreat and communities be able to recover. That is the most important, and for families to be reunited who for so long have not been.
Right. But what do you think? Do you think now this would lead to lasting peace in the region?
Well, you know, lasting peace isn't just achieved one day. It has to be accomplished every single day. And I think one of the places where India and the United States can work on that peace was the announcement during G20 of IMEC, the India-Middle East corridor, a way we could connect literally that old spice route that connected India with the Middle East, or as West Asia as it's called here, and Europe. This could be a way to embed peace across borders where we've seen too much conflict, investment to flow, tourists and visitors to come to these areas, and whether it's communications cables, or whether it's energy infrastructure, or whether it's the trade of goods and services, create jobs that are the lasting product that creates peace.
Right. What is your worry at this stage? Because when we were hearing Joe Biden's speech, he was talking about how oligarchy is taking shape in America, how a tech industrial complex is being formed, how power is now getting concentrated in the hands of very few politicians and tech billionaires. What do you think is the big worry, and what could we see shaping up in America in the days to come?
Well, I personally think we live in some of the most exciting times in human history, but there are also some of the greatest dangers we've ever faced. Obviously more conflict at the same time than ever in our lifetimes. But what US and India show is when we share values and remind that we're constitutional democracies when other countries are not, when we respect the diversity and the rights of all people while other countries don't, that's when we're at our strongest individually and collectively. So when we see the ability, for instance, to work in Africa together, Southeast Asia, the Pacific Island countries, to be bigger than ourselves, of course to help Indians, of course to help Americans, but to think more broadly than that, that's really where the US-India relationship has a certain magic. I think in our values we want to share prosperity, not concentrate it. I think in our values we believe in democracy, not in the concentration of power. So, for instance, the ISET initiative of critical emerging technologies is how do we use technology to connect and protect us, not to divide us or harm us. So it's a good clarion call that the president put out there. Any country, I think, probably feels the same. And it's up to citizens every single day to make sure that that prosperity is shared, never over-concentrated. And in a democracy, you got a much better shot of doing that every time you vote.
As a diplomat and as a politician, what do you think Donald Trump and the people around him are trying to do? If you had to explain our viewers the importance of Joe Biden's address, the essence of what he's talking about when he warns people in America about disinformation, about oligarchy, about concentration of tech power in the hands of few billionaires, what exactly is happening, and what would you like to warn people about?
Well, look, I don't think it's about an incoming administration. I think it's a general warning that we suddenly open up our phones and we think a politician's talking to us only to learn that it's AI using their face and words that they never said before. We have to guard ourselves, train our children how to find real facts, how to do their own research. And I always remind people the best weapon against changing technology is go outside and talk to real people. As a politician, I had to knock door by door in a constituency, and 99.99% of people never actually have this sort of a face-to-face conversation. That's how we save democracies. That's how we engage in our responsibilities in a democracy. And in the time in between elections, do the work that we've done here in the US and India. Find companies that will co-invest, figure out how we can lift up the empowerment of women, take on the climate crisis that we see in my own city in Los Angeles with fires right now, or as we've seen with floods and other things here in India. That work is too precious for us to just sit back, be passive on our couches, watching the news saying, oh, the world's turning bad. Go make the world instead of passively receive it.
So Elon Musk and Donald Trump, how do you think this relationship is going to be?
Well, it's certainly a dynamic one. Two very strong, very successful individuals. I've worked with Elon in Los Angeles quite a bit. I mean, I think what you have in Elon Musk is somebody who has always pushed the boundaries. I think that it's important for us to remember any one person from the richest to the poorest. In a democracy, we all should all be equal. But let's also harness the courage to not see the world the way it is. I think one thing loud and clear, no matter what political party you're a part of, the status quo isn't working for everyone. It might not be the solutions proposed of it just exploding everything is a solution. But there are certain things we all have to be able to stop defending and walk away from. For instance, the US-India relationship, for too long, and it's very true, we've said, we really like each other. We're working at a historic high. Think about record visas, record students, record trade, record defense work, record space work. But it's still not good enough. If we're going to outpace our adversaries, if we're going to redefine the supply chains of the future, if we're going to find AI that works for human beings instead of oppresses us, let's continue raising that ambition. And I think that's the dynamic we're seeing in a new administration that, you know, Elon Musk has always brought as well. And it isn't about the defense or the criticism of any one person. It's about the engagement of all of us.
All right. I'd like to ask you about Biden administration's legacy vis-a-vis India.
Yeah. I think this is the most pro-Indian president and administration we've ever had. And vice versa, by the way, the most pro-American prime minister and administration here in India we've ever had. And I'm sure that President Trump will want to take it the next level up from that. But President Biden told me when he asked me to become the emissary here, he said, this is the most important country in the world to me. I believe no American president ever said that in history. And that was 30 years in the making, where he saw our values are aligned, our diversity is similar, We both have constitutions. We see the same threats out there, whether it's countries that want to define the world by their might, or whether it's climate and artificial intelligence and things like that. So when the Prime Minister visited with President Biden, the first time for the state visit, or as a second visit actually, there was 178 different deliverables, from returning Indian cultural artifacts to launching satellites that have never been seen in the history of humanity into space, and everything in between. We're sharing our best technologies with India, we're sharing our hearts with India, and vice versa. India is teaching us so much as well. So I think the legacy of the Biden administration will be that a generation ago, this relationship would have been unimaginable. A generation from now, people will look back and say, this is indispensable for the world and for our people.
Right. If there were any recommendations on ease of doing business, something which you feel has been an irritant in India-US ties, which can be erased, what would that be?
Well, I'm very humbled that I'm sure there's a list for Indian companies in the US. So we're not perfect, we're bureaucratic as well. But it's still a complex place to do business. I'm a big cheerleader for India, and I want to see more American companies investing more, especially as they take supply chain and manufacturing out of places like China. We need to land that here. And this has never been a better place to do business, great incentives, amazing workforce, infrastructure that's being built out, but it still can go further, faster. So when I see a company saying, well, we're going to go to Southeast Asia because it's a little bit more easy to do business there, the regulations, the real estate, the technologies, the whatever it is, I say, no, come here. But I look forward to an India that continues to accelerate lowering of tariffs, training of the workforce, building out the transportation infrastructure, safeguarding the trademarks. The more India does, I guarantee you, it will pay off in an exponential way.
The Panun case and also the Adani case in the US, how is this likely to play out? And is this going to be a problem with India-US relations as well?
I don't think there's anything that could stand in the way of US-India progress. You know, a relationship is defined not by whether you love each other. It's clear US and India love each other. But like in a marriage, can you get past your first fight? Or do you know how to disagree and get through it? And I think we're showing that. In the Panun case, it was a welcome first step yesterday to see the report come out of the Ministry of Home Affairs, which talked about systemic reform and accountability, which we've been clear. Those two things, which never should happen again, are the three conditions for moving forward. There's still a while to go, but it is a very welcome first step. I can't speak to the other case because that's something that I haven't been read into. But look, we are going to need Indian partners, companies that can work with America, that we can help finance in places, whether it's in South Asia, whether it's in Africa or Southeast Asia. We need things that are not debt traps. We need companies that are not state-owned, non-democratic players. And so I look forward to continuing to deepen that work with all Indian companies in the future.
Right.
All right, time now for a short break. News and updates continue right here.